Neighbors evicted orphaned children unaware of the million-dollar inheritance. Abigail held her two younger siblings' hands tightly as the man in a suit yelled that they needed to leave the apartment immediately. The children trembled, still grieving the recent loss of their grandmother, the only family they had left. That's when the building manager appeared at the door with a stack of papers in hand, saying the fees were overdue and that 3 minors couldn't stay there alone. "You have 10 minutes to gather your things and leave," the man declared, adjusting his glasses impatiently. Abigail, just 10 years old, felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Ethan, 8, cried softly while clutching his school backpack. Little Emma, 6, didn't fully understand what was happening, but sensed the desperation in her older sister's eyes. "Please, sir," the social worker said she'd only come on Monday. "It's just 3 days." Abigail pleaded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Not my problem, the rules are clear," the manager replied, stomping his foot. From the hallway, some neighbors watched the scene. Mrs. Thompson from apartment 302 whispered something to her husband. The couple from 205, who always complained about the noise of children playing, stood with their arms crossed, clearly pleased. "Where will we sleep tonight?" Ethan asked, wiping his tears with his shirt sleeve. Abigail didn't know how to answer. Their grandmother had passed just a week ago, and they'd barely had time to process the loss. Now they were being thrown out of the only home they'd ever known. Then, a gentle voice spoke from the end of the hallway. "You can stay in my back room, at least for tonight." It was Mrs. Jenkins, the grey-haired lady who worked at the corner store. All the neighbors knew her, but few ever spoke to her. Abigail looked at her with tearful eyes full of gratitude. "Are you sure, Mum? We don't want to be a bother," Abigail said, still wary after so much rejection. "Sweetheart, bother how? You're just little kids. Come on, grab your things and let's get out of here." The manager grumbled something about responsibility, but didn't stop them. The other neighbors returned to their apartments, relieved they didn't have to deal with the situation anymore. As they walked down the street toward the corner store, Abigail remembered her grandmother's last words. She'd been very weak, but had gripped her granddaughter's hand tightly and whispered something about Grandpa's treasure hidden in the house. At the time, Abigail thought it was just feverish rambling, but now those words came back to her strongly. The back room of the corner store was small but clean. Mrs. Jenkins had laid out 3 thin mattresses on the floor and brought lavender-scented blankets. "It's not much, but you'll be safe here," she said, stroking Emma's face. "Tomorrow we'll figure things out." That night, even exhausted, the children barely slept. Ethan had nightmares and woke up several times calling for their grandmother. Emma wet the bed, something she hadn't done in years. Abigail stayed awake, thinking about what they'd do when the social worker arrived, but there was something else. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "Grandpa's treasure is hidden," she'd said. "If anything happens to me, look under the floorboards in my room." The next morning, Abigail woke up determined. She needed to go back to the apartment and search for this so-called treasure. Maybe it was just some family jewelry or a bit of saved money, anything that could help them. "Mrs. Jenkins, could you watch my siblings for a few hours? I need to go back to get some things I forgot," Abigail lied. "Of course, dear, but be careful, okay? Those people upstairs have no heart." Abigail walked the 3 blocks back to the apartment complex. Her heart pounded as she climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The door to apartment 302 was open, and she could hear voices and noises coming from inside. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, hidden behind the staircase, Abigail watched men going in and out of the apartment with tools and construction materials. They were renovating the place. But how? It hadn't even been a day since they'd left. "Look at this old wood," said a man in overalls, carrying planks that looked like they came from Grandma's bedroom floor. "We'll have to replace all of it." Abigail's heart sank. If something had been hidden under the floorboards, they'd find it. She moved closer, trying to listen. "Frank, can you believe how fast these people want to sell the apartment?" remarked another worker. "The old lady isn't even cold yet, and they're already renovating to put it on the market." "Well, the building manager said the sale money will be split among the residents to cover overdue fees," replied Frank, a middle-aged man with a graying mustache. Abigail felt anger rising inside her. So that was it. The neighbors wanted to get rid of them so they could sell the apartment and make money. She clenched her fists, trying to hold back tears of frustration. Suddenly, she saw Frank leave the apartment carrying 3 old, heavy suitcases. He looked around as if making sure no one was watching, then hurried down the stairs. Abigail followed at a safe distance. Frank lived in a modest house about 10 blocks away. She hid behind a car and watched as he struggled to carry the suitcases inside. Through the open kitchen window, she could hear raised voices. "Frank, where did these suitcases come from?" asked a woman. "Found them in the old lady's apartment. They were hidden under the floorboards. Probably just old clothes or junk." "You can't keep a dead woman's things, that's not right," said the woman, likely his wife. "Barbara, no one's going to miss them. Those kids were kicked out just yesterday. Besides, if I hadn't taken them, someone else would have." Abigail heard the sound of a zipper opening. A long silence followed, then a muffled gasp from the woman. "My heavens, Frank, this is money. A lot of money." "What? Let me see." The man's voice trembled. "Good Lord, there are papers here too, some documents." "Frank, we have to return this to the girls. This money belongs to them." "Return it. Barbara, are you crazy? With this amount, we could buy our own house, get the girls out of public school. This is theft, Frank. I won't be an accomplice." Abigail's heart raced. So it was true. Grandma had hidden something, and from what she'd heard, it was a lot of money. She needed to tell her siblings, but she also had to figure out how to get back what was rightfully theirs. She ran back to the corner store, her mind buzzing with plans. When she arrived, she found Ethan and Emma helping Mrs. Jenkins organize the shelves. "Abigail!" Emma shouted, running to hug her sister. "Aunt Jenkins said we can stay here until Monday." "Sweetheart, did you get what you needed?" Mrs. Jenkins asked, noticing Abigail's agitation. Abigail hesitated. She didn't know if she should mention the money. What if no one believed her? What if it was dangerous? "I did, Mrs. Jenkins. Thank you so much for looking after them." That night, after Ethan and Emma had fallen asleep, Abigail told Mrs. Jenkins everything. The older woman listened quietly, shaking her head from time to time. "Dear, your grandmother was a very private woman, but I always knew she had her savings. She worked as a seamstress for decades and lived far too simply for someone who only had her pension to rely on." "What do you think I should do?" asked Abigail, feeling too small to handle everything. "First, let's wait for the social worker to arrive. She'll know how to proceed. Second, you'll need proof that this money belongs to your family." "But how can I get proof if the suitcases are with the construction worker?" Mrs. Jenkins grew thoughtful for a moment. "His wife seemed like a good person from what you told me. Maybe she's the key to solving this." On Saturday morning, Abigail decided to go back to the construction worker's house. She needed to talk to Barbara. She asked Mrs. Jenkins to watch her siblings again and left determined. When she got there, she saw Frank leaving the house with a worried expression. He got into his car and drove off quickly. Abigail waited a few minutes and knocked on the door. "Hello, Mrs. Barbara. I'm Abigail, one of the girls who lived in the apartment where your husband is working." The woman opened the door slowly, her face pale. She looked about 40, with brown hair tied in a ponytail and kind but troubled eyes. "Dear, what are you doing here? How do you know my name?" "I overheard the conversation yesterday about the suitcases. That money is ours, ma'am. It belonged to my grandmother." Barbara glanced around nervously and motioned for Abigail to come inside. "Dear, I don't know what to do. My husband is obsessed with that money. He even rented a storage unit to hide the suitcases. He says no one will ever find out. Please, Mrs. Barbara, we're just 3 kids with no one. That money could be our salvation." Abigail began to cry. "We don't want anything that isn't ours, but it belonged to our grandmother." The woman stepped closer and hugged Abigail. "I know, sweetheart. I know. My heart is breaking over this. I can't even sleep. Can you help us?" Barbara stayed silent for a long moment. "I'll try, but I need time. My husband is very worked up. He's even talking about leaving town. He's afraid someone will find out." "What is he afraid of?" Abigail asked. The building manager. It seems the man found out about the money and is blackmailing Frank. He wants half of everything, or he'll report him to the authorities. The situation was getting more and more complicated. Abigail felt an enormous weight on her shoulders. How could a 10-year-old girl deal with greedy, unscrupulous adults? Mrs. Barbara, the social worker, is coming on Monday. If you tell her everything, maybe we can resolve this the right way. I'll think about it, dear, but you need to leave now. If Frank comes back and finds you here, he'll be furious. Abigail returned to the corner store with a heavy heart. She told Mrs. Jenkins everything, who was outraged by the situation. What kind of world is this, my dear? Adults stealing from orphaned children, the older woman muttered as she prepared lunch. But don't worry, the truth always comes out. On Sunday, things took an unexpected turn. Mrs. Jenkins was working at the corner store when the building manager showed up, accompanied by 2 other residents from the building. Jenkins, I heard you're sheltering the girls. That's your business. But I came to let you know the old lady's apartment has already been sold. Sold? How? Mrs. Jenkins asked suspiciously. It hasn't even been a week since she passed. The residents got together and decided to sell quickly before any bureaucratic issues came up. The money will be used to pay overdue fees, and there'll even be some left over for building repairs. Abigail, who was organizing cans at the back of the store, heard everything. Her blood boiled. They had sold her home, the house where she was born, where she grew up with her siblings and grandmother. After the men left, Mrs. Jenkins approached her. My dear, this can't be right. They can't sell a property like this without proper documentation. Mrs. Jenkins, I need to tell you something, she said. Grandma always said our family had rights to that apartment. She told me that when I turned 18, I'd understand everything. That night, Abigail barely slept. Tomorrow, the social worker would arrive, and she needed to tell her everything. But what if the woman didn't believe her? What if she thought it was just a child's imagination? On Monday morning, right at 9 o'clock, a middle-aged woman knocked on the door of the corner store. She had short, graying hair, wore glasses, and carried a black briefcase. Good morning, I'm Cheryl, the social worker. I've come to pick up the Reynolds children. Please come in, said Mrs. Jenkins. The children are getting ready. Would you like some coffee? As they drank their coffee, Abigail told Cheryl the whole story. The woman listened carefully, taking notes. Abigail, this is a very serious accusation. Are you sure about what you're saying? Yes, Aunt Cheryl, I saw everything. And the construction worker's wife knows where the suitcases are. Cheryl was thoughtful for a moment. Well, first, we'll settle the matter of your custody. Then we'll look into this story about the money, but sweetheart, I want you to know that even if this inheritance exists, you'll need an adult guardian. I can be their temporary guardian, Mrs. Jenkins offered. I've been taking care of them for days now. That would be wonderful, Jenkins. I'll start the paperwork. And about this stolen money, I'll bring a volunteer lawyer to talk with you. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. On Tuesday, Cheryl returned with a man around 50, with graying hair and prescription glasses. He introduced himself as Dr. Wilson, a lawyer who worked on social cases. Abigail, I need you to tell me everything again in the smallest details, said Dr. Wilson, pulling out a recorder from his pocket. And I'll need to speak with this woman, Barbara. After hearing the full account, Dr. Wilson went to talk to Barbara. He returned 2 hours later with a serious expression. Girls, the situation is more complicated than we thought. Mrs. Barbara confirmed everything you said. There really is a lot of money involved, and important documents too. What kind of documents? Abigail asked. Investment papers, insurance policies, even deeds. It seems your grandmother was more well off than she appeared. Dr. Wilson explained that first, they'd need to retrieve the suitcases from the storage where Frank had hidden them. For that, they'd have to involve the authorities. But doctor, what will happen to Frank and the superintendent? Abigail asked, worried about Barbara. That will depend on how they cooperate with the investigation. If they return everything voluntarily, there may be no criminal consequences. On Wednesday, Barbara showed up at the corner store, her eyes red from crying. "Girls, I can't take this anymore. Frank is desperate, the superintendent is pressuring me, and I can't live with this guilt." "What are you going to do?" Mrs. Jenkins asked. "I'm going to get the suitcases from storage and give them to you. I don't care about the consequences anymore." Dr. Wilson, who was present, was surprised by Barbara's decision. "Ma'am, that's very brave of you. I can assure you this will be taken into account if there's any legal action." On Thursday, Barbara kept her promise. She showed up at the corner store with the 3 old suitcases, heavy and dusty. "There you go, girls. This belongs to you. I hope you can forgive me for the delay." When they opened the suitcases, everyone fell silent. Inside were bundles and bundles of money, all neatly organized and tied with string. There were also old documents, yellowed papers, and some jewelry. Dr. Wilson examined the documents carefully. "Girls, you have no idea what you've got here. Your grandmother wasn't just a simple seamstress. She was a very smart investor." "What do you mean, Doctor?" asked Abigail. "She's been buying and selling properties for decades. There are documents here for at least 5 different properties. And these insurance policies, girls, you've inherited a considerable fortune." Ethan and Emma, who until then hadn't fully grasped the situation, were stunned. "You mean we're rich?" Ethan asked, his eyes wide. "Not exactly rich, but you have enough resources to live comfortably and study without worries," Dr. Wilson explained. Mrs. Jenkins shook her head in admiration. "Your grandmother really was a strong woman. She worked hard and still found time to manage her business." But the joy of the discovery was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. It was the building manager, accompanied by Frank, and 2 other men Abigail didn't recognize. "I heard you found some suitcases that belong to the building," the manager said, stepping in uninvited. "Anything found in the apartment is common property of the residents." Dr. Wilson stood up, positioning himself between the men and the children. "Excuse me, who are you?" "I'm the building manager where these girls used to live, and this is the handyman who was renovating the apartment." "Well, gentlemen, these suitcases and their contents legally belong to the girls. I have documents here that prove the inheritance." "What documents? These girls are minors. They can't inherit anything," the manager insisted. "Yes, they can, with proper legal representation, and I'm the lawyer handling this." The argument grew heated. The manager insisted the apartment had been sold and that anything found there belonged to the buyers. Frank grew nervous, constantly glancing at his wife. "Frank, just tell them already," Barbara whispered. "I can't take this lie anymore." "Tell us what?" Dr. Wilson asked. Frank took a deep breath. I took the suitcases from the girls' home. I thought they were just old clothes. When I saw the money, I was afraid to return it and end up being accused of theft." "So you decided to keep the money?" Dr. Wilson pressed. "It wasn't like that. The manager found out and said if I didn't split it with him, he'd report me." All eyes turned to the manager, who flushed with anger. "That's a lie. I never blackmailed anyone." "Mr. Manager," Dr. Wilson intervened, "I suggest we all talk calmly. I'll contact the proper authorities to resolve this situation appropriately." The men left the corner store muttering threats. Barbara stayed behind, apologizing once more. "Girls, you're very brave. I hope you can build a happy life with this inheritance from your grandmother." Dr. Wilson spent the rest of the week organizing the children's paperwork. He discovered their grandmother had left a will filed at the courthouse, but it had never been opened. "Girls, we're going to the courthouse tomorrow. I need to see that will." At the courthouse, the clerk confirmed there was a will in the name of Margaret Reynolds, the children's grandmother. When they opened the document, everyone was surprised. Margaret had left very detailed instructions about her assets and investments. Besides the properties and the money, there was also a life insurance policy worth $500,000. "My goodness," Dr. Wilson murmured. "Your grandmother was truly a prudent woman." But the biggest surprise came at the end of the will. Margaret had left a specific letter for Abigail with instructions in case something happened before the girl turned 18. Dr. Wilson read the letter aloud. "My dear Abigail, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't take care of you until you grew up. Don't blame yourself for anything that may have happened. Adults sometimes make bad choices out of greed or fear. The money I left for you came from years of honest work and careful investments. Use it to care for your siblings and give them the opportunities I couldn't give you. There's a lawyer I trust, Dr. Richard Peterson, who knows all about my financial situation. Look for him. Address Maple Street 234. And always remember, true wealth isn't in money, but in the love you have for one another. Abigail cried as she heard her grandmother's words. It was as if she had known something might happen and had prepared to protect her grandchildren. "Dr. Wilson, where is this Maple Street?" asked Abigail. "It's actually nearby. Let's look for this Dr. Richard tomorrow." Dr. Richard Peterson was a man of nearly 70, with completely white hair and a gentle smile. When Dr. Wilson explained the situation, the lawyer's face lit up. "Margaret Reynolds? Of course I remember her. We were friends for over 20 years. She always spoke of her grandchildren with such affection." Dr. Richard opened an old file and showed dozens of documents. "Your grandmother came to me about 2 years ago, worried about your future. She had a feeling she might pass before you grew up. That's why she arranged everything down to the smallest detail." "Doctor, does this mean the children are truly entitled to everything?" asked Dr. Wilson. "Not only are they entitled, but Margaret left specific instructions on how the money should be used. There's an amount set aside for education, another for housing, and even a reserve for emergencies." Dr. Richard explained that Margaret had even chosen a private school for the children and had already paid the tuition for 2 years. "She really thought of everything," murmured Mrs. Jenkins, amazed. But the issue of housing still needed to be resolved. The apartment where they had lived had indeed been sold by the condo association under irregular circumstances. "That's a problem," said Dr. Richard. But Margaret had foreseen this possibility too. She left instructions to buy a suitable home for you. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. While the lawyers handled the legal matters, the children continued living in the back room of Mrs. Jenkins' corner store. The woman had become a second grandmother to them, and their life together was warm and loving. One morning, Dr. Richard arrived with an unexpected proposal. "Girls, I found the perfect house for you. It's just 2 blocks from here, has 3 bedrooms, and a big backyard. Best of all, the owner is willing to sell for a fair price. Can we go see it?" asked Ethan, excited at the prospect of having his own room. The house was truly perfect. It had a spacious living room, a large kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a backyard with a few fruit trees. Emma was delighted with the room that would be hers, already imagining where she'd place her dolls. "Dr. Richard, how much does it cost?" asked Abigail, still worried about money. "My dear, your grandmother left enough funds to buy this house and still have plenty left for your education and upkeep for many years. The buying process took a few weeks, but finally the children had a home of their own again. Mrs. Jenkins helped them move and settle in. You know you can always count on me, right?" she said emotionally. "Consider me a sort of aunt." "Mrs. Jenkins, do you want to live here with us?" asked Emma, hugging the woman's leg. "The house is big and there's an extra room." The offer moved Mrs. Jenkins, but she gently refused. "My dear, you need to learn to live as a family. I'll always be nearby, but you need your independence." Dr. Richard Peterson hired a trusted housekeeper, Mrs. Williams, a 50-year-old woman who had raised 6 children and had experience with kids. "Mrs. Williams won't be like a substitute mother," explained Dr. Peterson. "She'll help with household chores and make sure you lack nothing. But the important decisions are still yours, Abigail." Adjusting to their new life wasn't easy. Abigail felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for her younger siblings. Ethan struggled at his new school, and Emma suffered from constant nightmares. Mrs. Williams proved to be a valuable ally. She didn't try to replace their parents or grandmother, but provided the support they needed to just be kids. "Abigail, you don't have to carry the world on your shoulders," she'd say whenever she saw the girl too worried. "Your grandmother left everything organized so you could have a normal childhood." Little by little, the children adapted. Ethan made new friends at school and joined the soccer team. Emma signed up for the church choir and discovered she had a beautiful voice. Abigail, meanwhile, began taking guitar lessons with a private teacher. She'd always dreamed of learning music, but the family had never had the means. But the peace didn't last long. One afternoon, as the children returned from school, they found the superintendent from their old building waiting at their door. "Girls, we need to talk," he said with false politeness. "About what?" asked Abigail, suspicious. "About the apartment you lost. I'm here to propose a deal." "What kind of deal?" Mrs. Williams had arrived and overheard the conversation. "Well, the apartment was sold, but the buyers found some issues with the paperwork. They want to cancel the sale." Abigail didn't understand where he was going with this. "And what does that have to do with us? If you give up any rights to the apartment, I can guarantee you each get compensation, say $100,000 apiece." Mrs. Williams immediately sensed something was wrong. "Sir, these children have legal representation. Any proposal must go through their lawyers." "Oh, but this is just an informal chat to avoid bigger problems." When Dr. Peterson learned about the superintendent's visit, he was furious. "Girls, that man is trying to cheat you. Your apartment is worth much more than that, and besides, the sale was illegal." "But doctor, we don't even want the apartment back," said Abigail. "We like our new home." "That's not the issue, Abigail. The problem is they sold a property they had no right to sell, and now they're trying to buy your silence." Dr. Peterson explained he had filed a lawsuit against the building for the illegal sale. The former neighbors would have to return the money they received, plus interest and adjustments. "And what will happen to them?" asked Ethan. "They'll have to pay a hefty fine, and the superintendent might even lose his position." The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some neighbors who had participated in the children's eviction began showing up at the new house, trying to justify themselves. Mrs. Thompson, who lived in apartment 302, was one of the first. "Girls, I always thought what they did to you was wrong, but I couldn't do anything. The superintendent said it was legal." "You could have helped us," said Abigail, still hurt. "You didn't even have to take us in, but you could have said something." "I know, my dear, I know. My conscience has been heavy since that day." Other neighbors came forward with similar excuses. Some brought gifts, others offered money. Abigail received them politely but kept her distance. "Why are they doing this now?" asked Emma. "Because now they know we have money," replied Abigail, with a maturity that impressed everyone. Dr. Peterson advised the children to be cordial but cautious. "You don't have to be rude, but you also don't have to pretend you've forgotten what happened." The case of the apartment sold under irregular circumstances became a minor scandal in the neighborhood. The local paper ran a story about orphaned children harmed by neighbors' greed. The backlash was bigger than anyone expected. Several people began reaching out to the children, offering help. Some proposals were genuine, others clearly self-serving. "It's amazing how people change when they find out you have money," remarked Mrs. Williams. "When you needed help, no one showed up." Abigail was learning valuable lessons about human nature. Some people were genuinely good, like Mrs. Jenkins and Barbara. Others were driven only by self-interest. "Mrs. Williams, how do we know who to trust?" she asked. "My dear, trust the people who helped you when you had nothing to offer in return. Those are the real ones." Meanwhile, the lawsuit against the condo association moved forward. Dr. Peterson discovered it wasn't the first time the building manager had engaged in shady dealings. There were other accusations against him in different buildings. "Girls, it seems you weren't his only victims," said Dr. Peterson. "There are other families who were harmed." The revelation brought mixed feelings of justice and sadness. Abigail wondered how many others had suffered at the hands of that greedy man. "Dr. Peterson, what will happen to the other people he hurt?" "Well, with your case gaining attention, others who were wronged are feeling encouraged to come forward. Maybe we can help more people." Months later, the building manager was removed from his position and ordered to pay compensation to several families. The money from the illegal sale of the children's apartment was returned double as ruled by the court. "What should we do with this extra money?" asked Ethan. Abigail, who was becoming increasingly responsible, had an idea. "How about we help other children going through hard times?" The suggestion pleased everyone. With Dr. Peterson's guidance, they set up a small fund to assist struggling families in the neighborhood. It wasn't a formal institution, just a way to repay the kindness they had received. The first family they helped was Barbara's. Frank had lost his job after the scandal, and they were struggling. "Girls, you don't have to do this," said Barbara, tears in her eyes. "I don't deserve your kindness." "Yes, you do," replied Abigail. "You were brave and did the right thing when it mattered." The children's gesture deeply moved Barbara. She became one of their biggest advocates in the neighborhood, telling everyone she knew about the girls' generosity. Frank, ashamed of what he had done, approached the children to apologize in person. "Girls, I don't deserve forgiveness for what I did. Greed blinded me, and I almost ruined your lives." "Mr. Frank, everyone makes mistakes," said Abigail. "What matters is learning from them and trying to be better." The children's forgiveness had a profound impact on Frank. He became a different man, humbler and more generous. He got a new job and started visiting the children regularly, almost like a substitute uncle. The lives of the 3 orphaned children had completely transformed. They now had a comfortable home, a quality education, and people who truly cared for them. Abigail continued to be the natural leader of the family, but now she could also just be a 10-year-old girl. She played more, smiled more, and no longer carried the weight of the world alone. Ethan overcame his struggles in school and became one of the top students in his class. He discovered he had a talent for math and dreamed of becoming an engineer when he grew up. Emma blossomed like a flower nurtured with love. She sang in the church choir, had many friends, and had completely outgrown her nightmares. Mrs. Jenkins remained a constant presence in their lives. She had dinner with the family at least twice a week and was always available when they needed advice or affection. Mrs. Williams became much more than a housekeeper. She was a confidant, an advisor, and sometimes almost a substitute grandmother. The children loved her deeply. Dr. Peterson continued handling the family's legal and financial matters. He invested the money wisely, ensuring the children would have resources for the future. "Girls, you should be proud of your grandmother," he always said. "She didn't just leave you money, she also left you an example of how to be good people." The story of the 3 orphaned children became well known throughout the area. They were invited to charity events, local TV programs, and talks about overcoming adversity. But they always kept their feet on the ground. They didn't let fame or money change them. They remained normal kids who played, studied, and sometimes argued like any family. "Abigail, don't you think it's strange how our lives changed?" Ethan asked one day. "I think Grandma was watching over us from above," she replied. "She knew we'd need help." "But why were people so mean to us at first?" Emma questioned. "Because they thought we were weak and had no one to stand up for us," Abigail explained. "But they were wrong. We always had each other." 2 years after the events that changed their lives, the children were unrecognizable. Abigail had grown into a confident and responsible preteen. Ethan was a cheerful and studious boy. Emma had become a bright and affectionate little girl. They decided to throw a party to celebrate their 2nd anniversary in their new home. They invited everyone who had been important in their journey: Mrs. Jenkins, Mrs. Williams, Dr. Peterson, Dr. Wilson, Barbara, Frank, and even Cheryl, the social worker. "Do you know why we're having this party?" Abigail asked the guests. "To celebrate the new house," Ethan suggested. "Not just that. We're celebrating that we've learned who the people are that truly care about us." The party was small, but full of joy and emotion. Every person there had played an important role in rebuilding the children's lives. During the celebration, Dr. Peterson made a special announcement. "Girls, I have a surprise for you. Remember your grandmother's insurance policy?" "Yes, you said it hadn't matured yet," Abigail replied. "Well, it matured yesterday, and the amount with accumulated interest came to $800,000. Everyone fell silent for a moment. It was a lot of money, more than the children had ever imagined having. "Dr. Peterson, what are we going to do with so much money?" Ethan asked. "That's for you to decide, but I have a few suggestions." Dr. Peterson explained that part of the money should be invested for the children's future, ensuring their college education. Another portion could be used to expand the small assistance fund they had created. "And there's one more thing," he continued. "How about you buy the apartment where you used to live?" "What for?" asked Abigail, surprised. "To turn it into a special place, a space where kids from the neighborhood can come to study, play, and get tutoring." The idea excited all 3 children. It would be a way to transform a place of sad memories into one of joy and hope. "We can call it Grandma Margaret's Corner," Emma suggested, clapping her hands. "That's a beautiful idea," said Mrs. Jenkins, moved. "Your grandmother would be so proud." The Grandma Margaret's Corner project took shape quickly. The apartment was completely renovated and turned into a warm, colorful space. There was a study room with computers and books, a playroom for the little ones, a small library, and even a kitchen where the children could learn to make healthy snacks. Mrs. Jenkins was invited to oversee the space. She left the corner store in the care of a nephew and devoted herself entirely to the project. "Girls, are you sure about this? I'm too old to start something new," she said, touched by the invitation. "Mrs. Jenkins, you're the perfect person for this," Abigail insisted. "You were the one who took care of us when no one else would. Now you can care for other children." Grandma Margaret's Corner opened on a sunny Saturday afternoon. More than 50 neighborhood children attended, along with their parents. Among the guests were also the former neighbors who had turned the children away. They arrived hesitantly, clearly embarrassed, but were greeted with kindness. "You're welcome here," Abigail said, addressing them. "This place is for all the children in the neighborhood without exception." The girls' generosity made the former neighbors even more ashamed. Some cried, others apologized again, but the children had already decided to look forward, not back. The opening speech was given by Abigail, who at 12 years old already showed impressive maturity. "This place exists because our grandmother taught us that money only has value when it's used to do good. She worked her whole life to leave us an inheritance, but the real inheritance wasn't the coins hidden in the suitcases. It was the love, honesty, and generosity she taught us." The audience applauded, moved. Many adults present reflected on their own actions and values. "We want this to be a place where every child feels safe and loved," Abigail continued, "because every child deserves the chance to dream and grow up happy." After the opening, Grandma Margaret's Corner quickly became the neighborhood children's favorite gathering spot. Every day after school, dozens of boys and girls came together to study, play, and have snacks. Mrs. Jenkins, at 65, had found a new calling. She cared for each child as if they were her own grandchild, offering not just academic support, but also affection and attention. "Mrs. Jenkins, are you happy with your new job?" Emma asked one day. "My dear, I've never felt more useful in my life. Every child who comes here takes a little piece of my heart." The three sisters continued living in their own home, but spent much of their free time at the corner. They helped other kids with homework, organized games, and sometimes just offered a friendly shoulder to lean on. Abigail became like an older sister to all the younger children. She had endless patience and always found the right words to comfort or encourage. Ethan discovered he had a talent for teaching math. He came up with creative methods to explain difficult concepts, using games and playful activities. Emma became responsible for the artistic side of Grandma Margaret's Corner. She organized musical performances, plays, and drawing contests. "Do you know your very special children?" Dr. Richard Peterson would say whenever he visited them. Not everyone can turn suffering into generosity. The lives of the three orphans had found a greater purpose. They weren't just wealthy children who had inherited a fortune. They were people who had chosen to use their resources to make a difference in others' lives. Years passed, and Grandma Margaret's Corner became a respected institution in the neighborhood. Many children who attended the place earned scholarships to good schools. Others discovered artistic or athletic talents that changed their lives. Abigail, now 15, had grown into a beautiful and determined teenager. She maintained excellent grades in school and already knew she wanted to study law to help other vulnerable children. Ethan, at 13, remained the math genius. He competed in science Olympiads and dreamed of becoming an engineer to build affordable housing. Emma, at 11, had developed an even lovelier voice. She sang in the church choir, but also dreamed of becoming a music teacher for children. The three sisters had become an example for the entire community. Their story was told as one of resilience, generosity, and family unity. "Do you know the most beautiful part of your story?" Mrs. Williams asked one day as they prepared dinner together. "What, Mrs. Williams?" Emma asked. "It's that you've proven love is stronger than greed. that kindness always defeats cruelty, and that 3 united children can change the world around them. The end. And you, what did you think of this story of resilience and generosity? Tell us in the comments which part moved you the most, and if you know of similar cases in your town. Don't forget to like this video to support our work and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one. Your participation means a lot to us.